Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake. Today we're here to talk about some Critical Role.
Ooh, baby. I love talking about Critical Role.
Me too, and fantastic. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but fantastic episode this past week.
Whoa, slow your roll.
I know.
Critical Role.
I just got excited.
We haven't even done the recap yet. I mean, it's like going in for the kiss, and I just picked you up for dinner. You know.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Let's let it marinate a little bit. See where it goes.
Yep, you're right. I'm sorry.
Having said that, yes, it was an amazing episode, and I loved it.
But yeah, I threw myself completely off guard here. We're the Pixelists, talking about Critical Role. How are you doing today, man? There we go.
Doing good. I'm doing good. Things are good. Life's good. Dropped my kiddo off at daycare. Got a little advice in the YouTube comment section to always, we talked about this in the last app. Does the kid bring the jacket or not bring the jacket? Yeah. And got some advice in the YouTube comment section that was like, always bring the jacket. And I want you to know we've done it. So threw it in the backpack this morning, a little chilly of a day. So anyway, that's my random story, my anecdote about about doing that.
No, yeah, so, better to have and not need than need and not have. So makes sense.
Right. True in life also.
Yeah. Well, glad to hear it.
By the way, that was Matthew who gave that. I was like desperately looking for who that was who said it. Matthew Vandenaden. I think I said your name. Vanden. I don't know. I'm sorry, man.
That's
anyway,
okay.
Let's talk about Critical Role. Yeah. How are you today?
I'm doing good. And
good.
I quickly mentioned this to Blake, but just quick potential disclaimer. My neighbor is leaf blowing, and so just warning in case that weird noise comes out of nowhere, but hopefully we're not going to have to deal with that.
Seems like at a certain point you've blown all the leaves, right?
You would think so.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Hopefully they're almost done.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I'm doing good. I got my coffee, which is, I just had my first sip a moment before we started this, so I'm starting to feel the bean juice,
Yeah, I like the out of context that seems a little strange, but yeah, I got a nice cup of Joe here. Might go for a second cup today. I don't know.
Bro, I almost always go for a second cup these days, which probably is like not good for me, but
wow.
It's basically my ritual now. Like I have one right when I get up, and then I'll have a second one like 4 hours later. Typically.
Yeah, okay.
You typically one cup a day guy?
I'm a 1 cup kind of guy, but I also feel like I spruce up my coffee a bit. We got the honey, we got the half and half. So it's not doing me any favors. So I think for you drink it black, right? So
yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of a wash,
Yeah, maybe. I'm probably not.
You don't think so?
No, I think it probably is.
What are you trying to say?
Except for caffeine levels, like I'm probably destroying my brain with.
But do you do a big cup or a small cup? Like, do you have the options?
You have
a Keurig, right?
I have a Keurig, right? I do the 12 ounces.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess 24 total in the day.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone told me this, and for you guys listening who were like, can we move on already? Hang on. Someone told me that your cup of coffee has more caffeine in it than getting like an espresso from like the coffee shop.
Like what do you mean though? Like what are you defining as a cup of coffee? Like a Keurig pod or?
I didn't ask. This was just kind of like, laissez-faire, just like kind of placed on the table, and then the person left, and it was such a whirlwind of like, that can't be right, that I was in such shock that I didn't like chase after them to like, ask for clarity. But
I just feel like we need more context there. Like I'm sure some coffee drinks have more than an espresso shot, but
I think the implication was like just a general cup of coffee has more caffeine in it than a if you order an espresso.
I wonder. I don't even know how much caffeine is in a shot of espresso.
I don't either.
Or a typical cup of coffee. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Pixelists Coffee Podcast, y'all.
Yeah.
Hope you had a good one.
All right, so we're talking Critical Role today.
Yes.
We had episode 37 from the Boughs.
I was going to ask you the same thing.
From
Boughs? Boughs?
Bough. I feel like it's Boughs.
Boughs? Boughs of a tree?
Yeah.
Tree boughs?
They really need to pick names that stupid people can pronounce because this is way over us.
It's funny though, because since I have the first half of the recap, I was gonna do the same bit. I was gonna be like, how do you say this?
Hang on, let's go to the old Google. How to pronounce Boughs?
Boughs?
According to Google, Boughs.
Okay.
So who knows? But yeah, from the Boughs. And if you guys haven't tuned into the podcast before, we'd like to do a little recap. It's a long ep. So we'd like to take about the first 15, 20 minutes, talk about what happened on the episode in case you forgot. And then we dig into our actual discussion of the episode. So if you're checking out just the recap, you can see our full discussion down in link below. And also, if you have your own insights, you have your own theories, reactions that you want to share, definitely go to our full discussion and pop it in the YouTube comments because we want to hear about it. So having said that,
let's dive into it.
Wilhelm, do you want to handle the first half recap?
I shall. And like Blake already mentioned, this was episode 37 from the Boughs. And we pick up with the group on their astrally projected spiritual journey, trying to separate Laudna and Delilah's souls. And on this journey, we left them having just gone down beneath this shack into this tunnel. And they actually have just traveled out of the tunnel, seemingly to this upside down white stone hellscape, essentially. So they pop out of this tunnel. They can see the sun tree in the distance, and they're like, let's head toward the city. Once they make their way in, they start to notice that everything is like bleak and dark and muted colors and like stony, like things that should be wood are kind of having like a stony aesthetic. It's just like a really bleak, meek situation. And as they're looking at it, they notice that the roofs and the buildings begin to shift. And it's the city almost is acting as a maze, like constantly shifting around them. So they're like, okay, what's going on here? They pop up. We get a few perception checks to try to figure out what's going on. But the first thing they notice is that there is a voice coming from the alleyway. And Imogen opens her mind to see if she can connect to this voice, but she's unable to. There is a presence there, but they just seemingly can't be connected with. We then hear this voice speak, and it's a young boy that says, I felt you following Matilda. Like, why is that? And this voice is like, we should come play this game with me, Secret Treasures. And the party gets closer to investigate, and they see this little boy, but also this little ethereal black energy form that is taking the shape of a young girl, Matilda. And Imogen kind of reaches out to this Matilda form and is like, hey, like, you know, can we help you? And the Matilda form is thinking like, I don't know if I should trust this kid, like this boy, but I like him. And again, the boy wants to play this game with her, and Imogen tells Matilda, hey, don't trust him. And Imogen rolls a persuasion check and is successful. So Matilda then steps away from the boy. He then gets angry and throws dirt at her, and the form of Matilda kind of like dissipates away. The boy then walks away and also kind of disappears. But Orym does use his know your enemy, like fighter sense feat that he has, and learns that the boy has a lot more HP than him, but a lower AC. So something is like not as it seems.
Right.
Imogen then reaches out again to try to see if she can find Matilda telepathically, and does find her. And Matilda lets them know that she is at the barn. So Orym climbs up to look for this barn. He does see it, and again, the city is kind of shifting around them, and so he kind of stays up there at his post while kind of guiding the rest of the team to get to this barn. And Matt described, because of the way the the maze-like city is shifting around them, that there are going to be skill challenges to navigate, and these are kind of happening throughout the episode. They successfully complete this skill challenge because of Orm's help, make it to the barn, climb up, and inside, again, is this spectral form of Matilda, but there are also these dolls strewn about and these drawings. And so they start to ask her, like, what's going on? What are these dolls? And Matilda explains that, like, this one is the nice woman, and this was a bird that, I hope can take me away from here. And she basically explains that there's this mean lady that won't let her leave, and she points toward the massive decrepit sun tree in the middle of the city when she is referring to that. They're like, well, okay, how do we get her out of here? What should the plan be? Meanwhile, Chetney is like looking around, and these vines have been starting to consume the barn that they're in. And Chetney's like, hey, we got to get out of here. And so he jumps to leave the barn, but as he does, the vines constrict and block his path. So they're like, oh gosh. And in this moment, the Matilda form disappears again, and Chetney starts like trying to cut through the vines. He does, Orem cuts through the vines and does manage to make his way out. The rest of the party starts to attack them too, but it's just like regenerating too fast. So everyone inside has to start making saving throws against this necromantic effect. And on a save, they lose 1 hit dice. On a fail, they lose 2.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
It's getting pretty intense. So they're like, we got to get out of here. Ultimately, Chetney pulls out a piece of dynamite, chunks it, big explosion, and there's a hole big enough for them to escape through while like the vines are regenerating. So the party is then running through the city. Now, again, buildings shifting all around them. F.C.G flips their Changebringer coin to decide which way to go. They decide to go right, and as they approach the city, the center of the city, Orem notices a bit of firelight in a nearby house and halts the group. And Imogen, once again, reaches out telepathically, but now she hears an older Laudna respond. And Matilda says, again, Matilda is Laudna, obviously, if that wasn't clear already, but Matilda says that she's getting busy, she's busy getting ready for a fancy dinner tonight, and she's like putting on a nice dress. And Imogen's like, no, like basically begging her not to go. Orem's like, hey, we can't change the past. We're here to, change the future. And
right.
Meanwhile, Fern had collected those dolls from the barn previously and is looking at them. And the older one, bigger doll, is a woman. It's wearing a necklace. She takes the necklace off of it, and the doll like burns down to ash. And she has F.C.G inspect the necklace, and it's a real necklace. It's a fancy necklace, but it's not magical. Fern decides to keep it and actually puts it on for now. The party then make their way up inside, where Orem saw this light coming from, and they can see the room that Matilda is getting ready in. There's also an older man and an older woman in the room as well, also getting ready, and they're insisting like, hey, we need to hurry, we need to get going. Matt then asks Laura to roll just a d20, and this is basically another skill check for kind of navigating the city, but she rolls a 6, and so that's a failure. So Laudna's figure then disappears, getting ready to go to the dinner. Meanwhile, the older couple like turn around and follow her, but Imogen says, Delilah, we're coming for you. Both parents then like kind of turn around, and they notice this like green sheen in their eyes, and then all of a sudden they like lunge at the party. Big jump scare moment in the episode. Yeah. Fern and Imogen both take some necrotic damage. There's a really quick combat, like initiative is rolled, but they make pretty short work of it. Just a quick distraction. And the party realizes, hey, we can't keep like stopping at all of these little like Matilda memories we see. Like we're being distracted. We need to go to the source. And so They decide to head straight toward the sun tree. They go that way. The city continues to shift around them, but this time it's actually opening a path straight to the heart of the city for them. So they make their way there. F.C.G tosses it as a heal. Chetney chugs a potion. Chetney and Imogen both take their potions of possibility. They're basically getting ready for whatever this encounter is about to be. With the final preparations made, they kind of spread out a little bit in front of the tree and make their way toward it. As they do, there's this flicker of dark purple energy that kind of blossoms out of the ground and takes this ethereal, form of Delilah, and that's where we go to break for the first half.
Yeah, so great job. What a very like thematic and spooky first half. I thought that was really cool. So in the second half, it's this very tense opening scene where you kind of wonder are we about to go to blows here? And Delilah, who is in sort of like this ephemeral, sort of like silhouette-esque form, I guess, she asks, "So what now?" So you think they would just attack, but it's like, so what do we do now? And the party is immediately trying to convince her to let them have Laudna, basically. F.C.G offers therapy to Delilah and is like, yeah, I don't know what you've been through, but clearly something traumatic. Do you want to talk about it? Which I think it would have been great if there had been like, I don't know, Matt's like, yeah, roll a persuasion check or something, but Matt just blows past it. He's like, no. And each of them actually kind of take almost all of them take a turn at like trying to convince her. Ashton, there's this really great moment where Ashton is like, hey, I know you're really stuck on Laudna, and this thing's like spinning out from you, like you're losing control, and like I've been there too, yada yada. And Matt just kind of like listens, and then after about 30 seconds, basically says, something like, "I find the depths of your ignorance extremely boring," and you can see Taliesin. He's like, Oh, okay. Well, there's that. And she just like moves on from Taliesin or from Ashton. They ask again and again, like, let us have Laudna. Like, we know you're fading. And they're really trying to, like, she's presenting herself as like, really in control. And the party's basically being like, we know that you need Laudna. Delilah admits that, I didn't choose Laudna, but because of the events that happened in the past with the Sun Tree and her own demise, we are inevitably bound together. And Delilah assures them there is literally no outcome that involves separating the two of us. Like, we are as one, and either you leave Laudna with me here, or if you want to bring her back, you have to bring me back as well. There is, I think, an insight check or something like that that's rolled, and Imogen rolls like a 6 or something, or like a 4. And so not really sure if it's honest or not, but there is like a challenge of that to her where someone says, hey, I know you're fading here. Like, you're fading away. Like, you're losing your last remnants in this world. And Delilah actually isn't, rocked by that. She says, like, do you know where I'm fading to? And almost like it wouldn't be a bad thing if she faded away. And then she also mentions something like, you might have to help me with the exact phrasing, Will, but something like, there's an eternity, if you're allied to him or like with him or something. And the party's like, well, who's he? I'm assuming the whispered one, but we'll talk about it in our reactions.
Yeah.
But definitely it seems to be still like some kind of presence with that entity of some kind. And then finally, Chetney is the one who ultimately does break through like this facade of confidence, and is basically like, if we're gonna work with you, like, we need to see Laudna. We need to talk to Laudna. So Matt basically says, all right, roll a deception check. And he freaking rolls a natural 20, which you just knew it was coming. You knew he was going to roll a natural 20 because it's Travis. So rolls a natural 20. And then Matt shocks the cast. He says, 1 second, Marisha, do you want to come out? And the cast is like, wait, what? What's going on? And Matt describes the tree, this spot in the center that's like kind of like claws covering a cage that opens up, and the spirit of Laudna connects with Imogen, speaks out. Marisha comes in the room, sits in the DM chair, and has this very touching moment with Imogen that is basically like, I'm counting on you guys. And they're like, we're going to help you. We're going to save you. And then the tree closes back up. Marisha has to leave. The party's like, you were in the DM chair. You should have said that Delilah dies, or you had all this power. She leaves, and Imogen basically tells Delilah, we're going to sunder you, and then psychic lances her, and initiative starts. So this combat starts. And remember, if you get reduced to 0 hit points, you're removed from the astral plane. You go back to Whitestone, to the real world, I guess. And again, not getting lost in the details of every action that happens here. A few of the players are going to focus on damaging Delilah. And she's extremely resilient, not just because she's Delilah, but because the other enemy in this combat is the Sun Tree, which is an active entity. And one of its lair actions is basically putting the shield around Delilah that keeps getting re-upped every turn. So there's Delilah that they're attacking. She's also casting Necrotic Burst. Pretty much every legendary action, which happens after each person's turn, is a Necrotic Burst. And this thing hits really hard, 20, 30 points. In fact, I think at one point it hit for 42 on someone.
Yeah.
It's insane. It also moves you 20 feet as well. So Delilah is necrotic bursting everybody, moving people around. Some people are attacking Delilah. Aurum is focused on getting to Laudna. And so he has a turn where he does this incredible like acrobatic description where he grabs this rope and tries to leap up onto the tree. He fails. He action surges, gets back up on the tree, and he begins hacking away at the tree to try to open up the tree to get to Laudna. F.C.G is also trying to help with this, but unfortunately, he takes a necrotic burst, and this was like round 1, maybe round 2. But Sam Riegel goes, I'm out, and he goes, see ya, and gets reduced to 0 hit points. And like, he's the healer of the party, so immediately everyone's like, wait, what? He gets up, he's like, I'm gonna go join Marisha in the dead zone. So he leaves the table. He's gone. F.C.G's out of combat. Immediately there's some panic there. The party's continuing to try to figure out what to do. Fern is going to cast Scorching Ray at the tree, and Matt clarifies that there's actually 3 different parts of the tree that she can attack. And when she Scorching Rays, I think the top of the tree, I think the top actually gets destroyed by Aurum actually hacking away at it. When the top of the tree gets destroyed, Delilah's form becomes more necromantic. Her silhouette kind of solidifies into this sunken skull with green eyes. And Delilah basically freaks out to the point where Ashton's like, okay, attacking the tree is the right decision. Let's do it. So Fern's going to Scorching Ray it. They realize it's weak to fire. She's actually going to destroy the roots of the tree eventually. There are some undead that pop up that get destroyed pretty easily. And Aurum, who's on the tree trying to get to Laudna, eats a necrotic blast for 40-something damage, and he just is gone. Combat's coming down to the 3rd round to the wire, and they are using their motes of possibility. There's a nat 20 against Ashton, who uses one of his motes to get it re-rolled. And then Imogen, I think, had like 6 hit points left. She gets hit. She's going to poof. She does the mote. And there's this awesome moment where Matt, he rolls the dice, he looks up, and he says, natural 1. And Ashton's like, why do you have the same face as a natural 20? Like, come on, man. You got to change the face, please. So the necrotic burst misses. Imogen, who's been holding a level 3 spell slot this whole time, everyone's like, empty the clip. Use your spell slot. Let's go. She does lightning strike or lightning something. And remember, she told Delilah we were going to sunder you. She does the bolt of lightning on the tree. It sunders the tree, splits it in half, 30 plus damage, and Delilah screeches and then poofs to white as everyone wakes up in Whitestone. And that's where the episode ends. And that was episode 37 of From the Boughs, campaign 3 of Critical Role. So check the link if you want to see our full discussion down below. All right, Will, now that we've talked about it, pretty good app.
One of my favorites of the campaign, I think, honestly.
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Which, obviously there was a lot of, for lack of a better catch-all term here, there was a lot of role play, but there was also a lot of combat. And I think this was like a masterclass on how to do an encounter. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mean, not that, I guess we could go ahead and jump into it, but one of the things I wanted.
Yeah, let's table that just for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think you're right. I think it's worth talking about the combat, especially for you guys. Have I mentioned that I have a D&D campaign that I play? So for you guys who play D&D or you're a DM yourself, I think outside of Critical Role, there's something to talk about there of why that combat was so effective. It's not a bottle episode, so to speak, and it's not like a singular episode. These last few episodes have been really great, but this one especially, I don't know if you felt this way doing the recap. Like, hats off to you for the recap. Because as I was thinking about the first half, I was like, bro, there were so many things that happened this episode that all got squeezed into a 4-hour episode. Not to mention Matt, who is just a master of atmosphere and world building and creativity. It was an immersive episode. It had some emotional points too. And it was great for sure.
Yeah, I don't. It's obviously not fair to call anything a one shot, but I feel like because there's a lot of context you need aside from what happens in the episode, but it kind of works as a self-contained, especially if you're going to include the last episode, like a 2-shot, I guess, of this astral projection journey. I think is just like so. All right, a lot of people, I'm kind of going everywhere right here, but a lot of people when they get into Critical Role, or like when they want to get friends into Critical Role, they're like, hey, I don't want to start somebody with EP1, C1. Like, what's a good episode I could show somebody to like show them what it's about? And I feel like this episode, maybe these last two, could be that in the future for people, even though it would be massively spoilery. But like, for those of you that watch Campaign 2, the Happy Fun Ball episode is an episode that people cite a lot for like a great kind of self-contained one shot to show people. And that's just kind of the same vibe I got from this episode. I was like, man, just fantastic little adventure within the campaign.
Yeah, and we mentioned this last episode, but Matt, when he was, like I said, I mentioned this already last episode, but Matt, when he was interviewed at New York Comic Con, they asked about like, not this specific arc, but kind of like this, like, hey, was this the plan all along? What were you envisioning? And he had this great line where he was basically like, I just let my players determine like where they want to go, and then we kind of just build from there. All this to say, what a really cool side quest, if you can call it that, side arc. Getting Laudna back. It's just great how, the party has sort of created this side adventure, and how Matt, you can see the wheels turning as he creates these small, intricate details for us to appreciate.
Yeah. And how quickly, Matt, there's no sense wildly speculating, but clearly this resurrection journey for Laudna wasn't something that was planned because he didn't know she was going to die, right? So he put this together so quickly too, It's not like this was a set piece he'd been building to for the whole campaign. And so I'm just impressed with like such this cool one shot that he basically, I'm sure he grabbed things that he's been maybe planning for a while and thrown them together maybe, but still like just very impressed.
I think creating stuff on the spot is less about, and this, I guess this can be like kind of the start of like DM insights from this episode, but I think creating like meaningful story arcs is sometimes less about like the massive moments that happen, which there was one with Marisha coming to the table, but it's an appreciation for detail. So like the thing that I go to is Laudna has pate. There's been conversation that we've had around like, okay, how did Pate de Rolo come about? Yada yada. But we have this detail where Matilda is, I think, 2 or 3 years old in the barn and is creating dolls. It's fun for her. It's something. It's a childhood hobby of her, and so I can just kind of see Matt as like the mind is spinning out for like, okay, what if this happened or what if this happened? Like pulling in that detail of Pate and being like, you come into the barn and you see where this originated from, all the way back from her as a little girl. Like those kinds of things, I think, enrapture players more and bring them into a sense of like, I'm part of something, more than I think sometimes as DMs, we put this pressure on us to have that perfect line, that perfect moment, like the grandiose of the adventure. And I just think Matt brought in those details really well, including like even like when Imogen phoned Laudna and she was like, "Oh, I'm getting dressed. I'm going to this banquet," and I was like, "Oh man, I know what banquet that is." So
100%. And I don't remember who said it, nor do I remember their exact phrasing. But recently, on one of the episodes of Four Sided Dive, I think it was either Taliesin or Liam, mentioned that like that's one of the things Matt does. You'll just say something offhand, and then 30 episodes later, he's gonna bludgeon you in the face with it, like emotionally. So like the pate thing, and then the little boy. I was thinking that might have been Whitestone Andy, like and at least like an allusion to that. And so like that's another example of like an offhanded comment that Matt like tucked away, and then could kind of, but yeah.
It was interesting though when Orm did Know Your Enemy on Delilah, and he was like, "Oh well, I've already done it on when Delilah was the young boy. Sorry, I guess I already know." And Matt kind of like wryly smiled and was like, "Oh no, that was something else."
Yeah, very interesting.
I'm just curious. Like, okay, well, what was that then? Is it just Whitestone Andy, or was it something, literally something else? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that, and we can go ahead and go there, but I feel like that's a whole conversation because later, I think it's tough because the parents, the older people later, like that kind of was Delilah, or at least it was, if not literally her, like she clearly is pulling the strings, So
right.
It's interesting that the distinction was made that the boy wasn't. So maybe he wasn't, but it was the same situation with the parents, and Delilah's still puppet mastering, or is there a whole nother entity that's at play here? Perhaps even we were talking about dark domains or dread domains or
right,
whatever last episode, and how those are created for like these ultra powerful villains. Like maybe it's tied to those entities, or
I guess also like I kind of wonder like to what ends is Delilah, like when they asked to speak to Laudna and she's like, "Oh yes, I've been speaking to her quite a bit already." I think what have they been talking about? And two, what does she want from Laudna? Like I know they're linked. Like what is there to talk to her about? And then two, she's clearly, these memories are I guess it's kind of Laudna's like personal hell, And so I'm kind of like wondering like to what end, especially if Delilah's fading away to somewhere, why torture the soul of Laudna? And I kind of just wonder like what's the grand scheme in all this, which obviously we can only guess, but
yeah, I'm there with you because there's a lot to kind of piece together there, and we also don't know, like Delilah's not a reliable narrator, so who knows if what she says is the truth. But just to lay it all out there, a few things that she said, that she doesn't need Laudna, that this is just the most convenient way to come back, but could be a lie, but also there is the comments you alluded to, I think, in the recap about like, well, where I'm going, like that's fine, basically, like that's no skin off my back. And then I don't remember the context of when this conversation happened, but I think it was F.C.G kind of talking to Delilah, being like, we know Laudna's special, but like why are you interested in her? And Delilah says something about like, when I first chose her, I didn't know she was special, but then I found out she was. Like I like work for these gifts and she was born with some.
Right.
So there's like a lot of factors here. And if we can take what Delilah's saying at face value, then originally she just chose Laudna out of convenience, I guess, because she didn't know that Laudna was special. But maybe then once she learned that Laudna has, I guess for my money, she's referring to just her innate magical ability, like her sorcerer levels, if you will.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something deeper there. Like maybe she has some sort of connection to something that Delilah's trying to exploit. We know the Null Rock thing was absorbed, and so maybe that factors into this somehow. But yeah, I don't know what to make about why she was maybe she's just evil and is torturing Laudna to keep her there. Maybe Laudna needs to be in some sort of particular state of mind, like maybe like if she's constantly feeling this sense of dread or whatever it may be, maybe that helps Delilah keep a grasp on her. So, but yeah, that I was wondering this too, because all the moments we saw were seemingly puppeted by Delilah, but at the same time, they seemed to be real memories,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So, it's just a lot to kind of, and maybe there's nothing beneath the seams of these particular things, and it was just cool moments to be shared. But if there was a method to this madness for what Delilah was doing in these moments, I'm not sure.
Why do
I
you
just
think Laudna changed her name? I mean, is that the implication that rose from the dead and I am now Laudna? I mean,
yeah, well, not when she rose from the dead though, because again, if those are real memories, then those parents called her Laudna, so that was before she died.
right.
So
Right. But I also didn't know if that was just a slip from Matt or if Matt was just, because he actually, I think, says like Laudna or Matilda. I think maybe he says both in the same sentence. So I don't know if he was saying like for the players,
yeah, that's
it's
possible.
like, I mean, I don't know. Because I mean, again, like for just like simplicity of speaking, sometimes it's just easier to be now that
Right.
it's Laudna.
Right.
Yeah, so Laudna. But so I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point. So that is possible. But yeah, but either way, yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe it was I want a new lease on life, so here's a new name. Um I really didn't know what to make of that.
there was a point of confusion where the party thought the mother was named Laudna. Did you
Right.
notice that? Where they thought like, oh wait, Laudna's the mom? Like, wait,
Yeah.
what? But then it kind of like worked itself out. Where like Matilda was Laudna.
Right.
But still there was some confusion there. And so I do wonder if maybe her mother's name was also Laudna. And so when she, rose from the dead, it was kind of like this is the one piece of me that I want to hold on to. I don't know.
Yeah, and trying to interlace two things here. With the dolls at the top of the barn, there was like the smaller doll, the larger doll, which was like a woman that wore the necklace, and then the bird, right? I don't think, to me, the larger woman was like a nice woman and not a representative of like Delilah, the mean woman. I don't know if that's a fair take or not.
I'm not. I don't know. Honestly, I couldn't parse. I couldn't like piece together like what was being referenced in the sense of I didn't know. Honestly, the simplest line to draw is that she's referencing Delilah. Like this is the stereotype in media where it's like she won't let me leave. It's like the spiritual force that's controlling her, whatever. So that's the easiest line. But I also didn't know if there was some implication of like what her life was like with her mother.
Mm.
Um, so I think the first one makes the most sense, but I'm also open to could Matt have been trying to paint story points of like her actual life? Because I think Laudna in a previous episode talks about when they came to Whitestone, like her parents brought her, they knew she was special,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of handed her over, so to speak. These details kind of flesh that out a little bit more, where I think the original story made it seem like the parents were like, well, you're going to camp, see you later. But that the parents were actually like coming to live in Whitestone, maybe, or where it was like a bit of a longer stay. And then as a teenager, Laudna was taken to the banquet, I guess,
Yeah.
or at least not described a teenager. But we also know she was a bit older, right? I mean, because she's not teenage age; she's
She's
young adult,
yeah, presumably like young 20s, right? When she died and
right?
is forever locked in that age. Yeah, presumably. Um yeah, so I don't know, but and I need to just watch it again, but for some reason I feel like the phrase nice woman was mentioned, but I might maybe have made that up or maybe my context is incorrect. Um but to get back to what you were saying, maybe that was representative of her mother and not Delilah. And it's interesting that necklace. I'll be interested to see if like Fern still has it in the real
Right.
world and what significance that may have. Because if Laudna sees it, then maybe she could be like, "Oh, that was my mom's" or something.
Yeah, and there
Um,
was the interesting detail too, where she took the necklace off and the doll like disintegrated or something. So
strange. But okay, back to the thing about clearly Delilah was like torturing Laudna, but at the same time, those seem to be actual memories, right? So the one in the barn when she's a young girl, that would have been before Delilah, like in her life.
Yes, because they ask where if it's in Whitestone, and what was said was basically like no, but today it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And so, and this might just be I'm splitting hairs type of thing. But it seemed like, she drew the bird to like take her out of here, and maybe that's just take her out of this current hellscape. But if that like was like a true memory, like if she really did make a doll bird when she was a kid, then seemingly she wanted to be removed from wherever she was as a kid, like pre-Delilah. So that made me wonder, like, was there like, did she have like a really bad childhood? Like, were her parents abusive? Or, is there another like tragic element to this backstory? Or am I just overlapping two storylines where like, yes, this is technically a memory, but the things she's talking about are about the current situation and not, her real life when she was 3 years old or whatever.
My mind, I mean, I don't know, maybe Matt wants to make Laudna as sad as possible. But I assume it's the latter. Like, it's a memory. Here's the spirit of Laudna, who created dolls, and the detail of this moment is she's creating a bird as a imprisoned spirit who like wants to be free of this, which is equally meaningful and sad.
Right.
But that's at least where my headcanon goes, because otherwise, there's this whole other storyline of like, wow, your life really sucked. And didn't get any better. So
yeah, I think I'm with you there, but that was one thing knocking around in my head, so I at least wanted to regurgitate it here to see what you thought. But I think that makes sense too. And then one other thing on that moment is the drawings. One thing that stood out to me was obviously there's like just the black drawing that Ashton specifically asked her about. But the drawing of like the dragon creature flying in front of the sun, that, I mean, speaking of Matt and his little details that he, uses, I'm wondering if that's more than just like a red herring, and what that means, and could it even possibly tie into her being special? Like,
bro, it's absolutely some kind of reference to something. Matt is 100% dropping a breadcrumb for some tiny detail that is going to be a mega story point later on. Which I need to go back and watch that scene to get the exact detail. But yeah, there's something for sure going on there. I think it is tied, like you said, to her specialness or uniqueness. Whether it's good or bad is yet to be seen, but
true.
But yeah. So,
and kind of, you'll allow me to segue here a little bit, kind of on that detail of her specialness and stuff. There's this question of if they do successfully bring her back now, because clearly they were successful in splitting them, presumably. So now they're gonna.
I mean, we don't know, but
right.
Judging by the fact that Matt channeled his awesome Delilah screech, her reaction didn't seem happy by splitting the tree. So I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah. So two conversations I want to have. Like maybe what happens to Delilah, but first, what happens to Laudna? One, there's a question of will there still be like a role required for like the typical resurrection ritual? And if that fails, like, oh my gosh, that's going to be devastating. But maybe Matt won't call for one given this whole journey they've been on.
He shouldn't. He shouldn't after this whole journey. It's obnoxious otherwise.
Or, as DM, this, maybe there still is one, but basically it can't be failed, essentially, I guess if they roll a natural one, though.
Natural one. Well, one of the number one rules of being a DM, you never ask for a roll where if a failure could, change the outcome that you don't want, then, but I guess it could be, if it is a failure, I mean, what's Pike's modifier going to be? You know, like as a level 20 god, basically.
True.
But if it is a failure, there at least is a certain sweetness in knowing they've put Laudna's soul to rest.
True.
Like she can presumably move on to whatever afterlife awaits her. That's meaningful, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I agree with you, not to put words in your mouth, but I agree with you that I don't think there needs to be a role. But that being said, I do, some of my favorite moments in previous campaigns have been like these resurrection rituals where, you know, Matt asks, like, what are you bringing to this? And the player has to describe like how they are aiding in this ritual, and then like they roll, and depending on what they were like trying to accomplish, that, you know, determines the kind of check it is or whatever. So I just still like the RP fiend in me like would love to see Imogen have to do something like that, you know, or, you know, whoever it is. But at the same time, like they've already earned it, I feel like. So I don't think there will be, but you know, I would be okay if there was, assuming they don't fail.
They fail and they have to go back. We have to go back. Anyway.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. What were we talking about, by the way?
So that if Laudna comes back, so that aspect aside, if they do bring her back, and Delilah, let's just is not a part of her anymore. What does that mean for her warlock levels? What does that mean for her warlock abilities? Will this tie into her being special at all? Maybe like whatever power she had from that could now be something else. Yeah. And there is a slight precedent for this. I won't give spoilers, but in previous campaign. So I don't think Matt will just say, hey, you're 4 levels lower than everybody else now. There could be like maybe a little chunk of episodes where she's weaker as she tries to figure out like what's next. So that could happen. But I definitely think ultimately, if Marisha wants to keep those warlock abilities, I think she'll be able to. I don't think Matt will say no, you know?
Yeah.
But I do think there's a possibility here for like a cool shift, maybe to something, you know, in regards to why she's special or just whatever. And it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think one of 3 things happen. I think first, those 4 levels, Matt gives her the option to roll them over.
I just picked 4 out of a hat, by the way, before like we just keep saying that and everybody's like, it's not 4.
She's only 2 levels in. You idiots. The warlock levels, I think first option, Matt lets her roll them over either into her sorcerer levels, or it's sorcerer, right? Is there other
I think
class?
So, yeah.
Okay. Or into a new class potentially. Like there could be like a cool story point where, you know, because of what you've come through, you've unlocked this new power, and she, you know, I don't know, it might be kind of interesting. Second option is Matt allows her to homebrew a patronless warlock, just like we have a not godless paladin, but there's cleric. Like there cleric, thank you. Where there is an option where you don't have like a deity that you're attached to, so it could be something like that, which I think that's probably the simplest route we maybe go. The third option, which I think is more interesting, the most interesting, talking about the innate abilities and the dragon. Maybe her patron is something she's not quite sure of. Delilah sort of came in as a parasite and sort of took over and sort of harnessed those powers. And now that Delilah's gone, that power now gets tapped into. She continues to be a warlock. Her patron, she's not quite clear on, but I think it's that dragon maybe or something.
Yeah.
And now, because I think what's interesting for like stories like these is when the story is answered or like finished, it's like what happens next with that character. You know, like F.C.G, for example, we found out his backstory. We found out what happened in the sense of him being a murder robot. Well, what's next now is why. You know, where does he go from here? Like, how does he find out his true identity? I think it'd be interesting for Laudna if Delilah's dealt with, which is the main point of her story arc, I guess. but there's something else here. There's this other power or affinity that Delilah noticed. So those are the three things that I think could happen. I would love to see number 3 happen.
Yeah, me too. I think that would be really interesting. And I think you're definitely right that the the why, as you put it, is going to be really interesting to find out now that kind of the main thing has been dealt with. But maybe it hasn't, to shift to like what happens to Delilah now. We might not get, we as in the character's POV might not get an answer. To them, she faded to white, and that's probably all they're going to know for the foreseeable future. But if we can take what she was saying at face value, which we probably shouldn't, if your back's against the wall, you're not going to admit that, right? But she is seemingly going to Vecna's realm. At least that's what she heavily implied. And, basically implied that wouldn't be a bad thing. So again, maybe complete lying through the teeth, but if that's true, I mean, Vecna did ascend to godhood, so he presumably has like an afterlife realm, I would guess. We still don't even really know how Delilah originally got attached to Laudna.
Right.
Maybe she's been to this realm before and he helped her facilitate that. So, I mean, I'm taking a lot of what ifs here, but then if so, he could presumably do that again, right? So I don't know that we've seen the last of her, but I would guess that would probably leave that up to the players in a way. Like, kind of let them facilitate that. Because, I mean, for those of you that don't know, which I'm sure most of you do at this point, but Delilah has been a recurring villain. We've seen her many times. So at some point, I don't think that, like, Matt would be like, she's back again, unless that, like, serviced the story in a meaningful way. So I'm kind of unsure of where I'm landing here. I think it's infinitely possible for her to not be done with. But, like, there are many avenues for that to be the case. But I could also just see them laying it to bed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think like 10 episodes from now, there's Delilah again. I think there's like a carefulness that Matt is really appreciative of. And I like what you said, like we may not, for even the duration of campaign 3, get any kind of follow-up here. I don't think we've seen the last of her. And again, it's such a careful topic because you don't want to get to the point where people are like, oh my gosh, Delilah again. But definitely seems like there's something in play here. She seems very confident with the idea of going back to Vecna's realm, and also very comfortable with there being other options. Again, like you pointed out, unreliable narrator, who knows? But yeah. So
yeah, and not to mention this apogee solstice coming up that we know Delilah and Vecna were trying to utilize in the past. So maybe Vecna has his own machinations going on for utilizing that. And if she is indeed going back to his realm, maybe she will play a part in that as well. But one moment kind of speaking about Delilah that I really wanted to call out was Travis's natural 20 on that like deception he pulled on her, where they then got to talk to Laudna. That was so freaking clutch. And like
yeah,
I just thought he killed it right there. And I don't know, I love seeing Travis as he's one of my favorite players across all the campaigns, and it's just so cool to see him in this I don't know if it's fair to call him the face of the party or not, but he seems to kind of slide into that at times, of being the one that's gonna like roll up and make the persuasion or the deception check.
He's definitely like the challenger of the party. Like he will, oppose openly. That makes it sound like abrasive. I just mean like, remember you and him being like, hey, I know what you're doing here. This is very much someone who will lay cards out against whoever they're encountering and see where it goes. So you just knew he was going to roll an natural 20. I mean, you just knew it.
Yeah.
You could feel it. It's like it's going to happen. Not to mention Orem had 2 natural 20s also. I think maybe even back to back or close to back, where Matt was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" Like, so I don't know, but
Yeah, just shout out to Travis. It's been a joy watching him play this character, and that moment is just like one of the many reasons why. Okay, so you stop me if there's something else before I jump to this, but I wanted to just talk about the one shot, if you will, just like how Matt pieces together the combat encounter specifically, but also everything leading up to it. I thought it was just, and I mean, we had a nickel every time I said this, we'd be rich, but Matt's just a freaking put on a masterclass. I mean, that first half with just like the maze city and like how he rolled the skill challenges being like, yeah, it's just, you're going to have to make certain challenges to make your way through here. Quick aside, I'm curious if you had any thoughts on like maybe what that was leading to versus not leading to, or if it was just in the moment, if you want to progress to the next part, you're going to have to successfully navigate this city. Or do you think there was like a wider success versus failure based on like the whole situation? Like maybe if they failed, the encounter would have been that much tougher, or maybe since they succeeded, then I'm wildly speculating here, but the tree was there to attack and make the encounter easier.
So he made it clear that there were breakpoints. You need 4 successes or 2 failures, or something's going to happen. I'm assuming since the premise of it was this maze with like the city streets and buildings like shifting and literally a literal maze.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I keep explaining what a maze is. I'm assuming the 2 failures would have been a forced movement to the tree. Like you're not successfully making it through the maze. So maybe it's like roots come up, they grab you by the ankles, you get pulled down through the earth and you get spit out in front of the tree. Who knows? Now, probably the implication there is that you take a lot of damage or, we're crippled in some way. We had the necromantic energy before that was removing hit die.
Right.
So I think it my mind, just as like thinking like DM strategy, like you don't want your players to get stuck, right? And so I'm just assuming the 2 failures is some kind of forced. You're going to the sun tree one way or the other, but you definitely want to get there on your own terms rather than me getting you there,
right?
Because we've all been in that session where like the you as a player or you as the DM, it's just not going anywhere. Like, I had a riddle that I gave that I thought was super simple, like really easy. And about 45 minutes later, I was like, all right, well, let's just go ahead and move this along because this is not going anywhere. So that's where my mind goes. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
No, yeah, I mean, basically the same thing. I was just thought it was really cool. I loved just I don't know if aesthetic is the right word, but just like the whole atmosphere he created in that first half with like, they cut the building and it started bleeding or something to that effect. That might have not been exactly what happened. And the bones just like jutting out of the ground and attacking them at times.
Yeah. And I think the implication was that whatever was moving under the earth was like a giant, like a bone giant. Cause I think he had like the hand coming out or like something moving that was unnatural. And like you mentioned, the masterclass in like this one shot, it had a lot of things that I think are so important for a D&D session. A multitude of encounters, whether even though that the first one was, I think, a legitimate encounter. The 2 spirits with Laudna were more, this is what happens, I guess, but a multitude of encounters, player choice. What do you want to do? Intrigue, which I describe as like you're discovering like, okay, what's going on here? Like, okay, Matilda, this boy, like, wait, what? And then atmosphere, like the creative details, like you mentioned, the building getting cut and bleeding, the bones that were, coming out of the earth. There were a lot of really cool things that made this whole thing feel so fun. And then, like you mentioned earlier, the actual combat at the very end was unique. It's always kind of annoying when you get to like the big bad of the one shot, and it's like they do Eldritch Blast, and then you do attack, and then they Eldritch Blast again, and then it's like who's whittling each other down to 0 first. So anyway,
Yeah, the Eldritch Blast invoked something specific for me.
yeah.
But the combat encounter, especially, I just thought was so cool. Like, it felt to me like a Final Fantasy boss. You know,
I felt
like
the same way. That's
you
so funny
have
you say
like
that.
the boss entity, but then you also have this tree, and like that's kind of the secret that you need to figure out. You know,
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. That's great.
I just thought that was again masterclass. So I definitely wanted to shout it out, and shout outs to Fern. Really, I feel like for being the MVP to getting all that damage in on the tree. You know, Orem did a bit before he got poofed out, but ever since that, and of course, obviously Imogen's final strike, but it was basically Fern, the one that was doing it all. So,
Right.
Shout out to Ashley.
It's good too because I don't know if you felt this way at all, but I was getting some PTSD Atahan vibes. Like the amount of damage she was doing every turn with legendary actions.
Yeah.
The resilient sphere that she was having. The high enough AC, like where Travis did inflict wounds and missed. Like it really, and then the regeneration. She regenerated hit points too from the tree. There were definitely vibes of, okay, this is way like I was kind of thinking like, are we back in a situation where this is unwinnable? And so when the tree kind of was realized to be the focal point, I think anytime you give players a sense of discovery in combat or like things what's really happening, I think that's fun, right? And so you could see Fern when Matt was like, yeah, the fire hits, and you realize it really did some extra damage there, and then him RPing Delilah. I think it was after Orem cut the top half of the tree off, basically. And Delilah was like, freaking out, get down from there. That's just fun stuff. That's good. That's clever, encounter creating, I guess. So
yeah. And again, what a just brilliant encounter all around, because you could walk into that and say, well, they can't actually die. They just poof back to their bodies. There's no stakes. But the stakes were still just as high, because now if somebody goes down, they're gone. You can't toss them a potion. You can't toss them a heal. They cannot help you in this fight anymore, which,
right.
Is for your friend's life, So I thought it was really cool how, like, while there were no stakes, there were still super high stakes. And it actually kind of made it cool that, like, Sam and, then Liam were just walked away, I thought it really like elevated, like, oh, like, are they going to be able to pull this off still? So just shout out Matt for the entire one shot again, if I can call it that, but especially that encounter at the end. I thought it was just, I was hooked the whole time,
Yeah, it was really good for sure.
Other than that, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier about the Matilda name was, I don't know if this would be the case or not, but this could be like a Sam Riegel-esque kind of long con joke sort of thing. But in previous campaigns, there's been like a steamy romance novel that one of the characters was reading. It's actually showed up in Legend of Vox Machina too, as a little Easter egg, called Tusk Love, and it was revealed that was written by Matilda Merceria, so like Matt Mercer. But so if Laudna's name is Matilda, then perhaps in universe, like when she was alone in a shack, living for all those years, maybe she wrote steamy romance novels.
Gotta have something to pass the time,
So, I mean, we could see. That would be hilarious if so.
That would be really funny.
Let's see. I think we've basically covered most of what I wanted to.
I'd love for our viewers, for you guys, I mean, I just think about like the deep dive on Elixion and like the Paragon's Call. We know that Matt, for like demigods and deities, pretty much all of them are, unless for the most part, are lifts or inspired from like canon D&D entities. So I would love, I don't know anything about a black dragon in front of a sun. I would love if you guys who are much more versed in the lore of D&D. If anyone's got any ideas, even other, source books or critical role books, if any ideas what that could possibly be, I'd really love to hear about it.
Me too.
Don't tell Will. Just tell me.
Oh!
He must not know. All right. Well, next episode's tonight, which is pretty cool. I hope we get a really meaningful resurrection.
It'll be funny to see such a serious moment with them all in costume, because they're going to be in costume for Halloween this week.
Ooh, I'm going to be in costume on Monday for my next D&D sesh.
Oh yeah? What are you dressing up as?
I don't know. I don't know what's a good DM outfit. So I not purposefully to be like Matt Mercer, but I wore like a tuxedo vest last year. So I don't really know what to wear, but I don't know.
Okay.
Any ideas?
What are your players doing? Are they dressing up as like their characters?
Our characters, yeah.
Well, you should just pick a NPC.
True.
Bro. Yeah. Oh, one final tidbit really quick that I forgot. Imogen's Call Ruidus ability. That was really cool.
How did we forget that? Yeah. I love Travis being like, I live with her and I didn't know about this. Okay, so is that the feat that she got?
I feel like it has to be, right? Because for those of you that don't remember, Matt was like, hey, Laura, like check your feats after, was it the Odahan fight?
Yeah. So she can take damage and get this Call Ruidus like inflict damage ability.
So that's what I was going to ask you, and I should have just went back and rewatched it, but did she take damage like in that moment? I couldn't tell if that's what she was doing or if she was like sacrificing hit dice.
She said, I'm going to take 3, and then she had to roll, and I think it was 6 hit points of damage. Okay. And then she got to deal damage, it seemed like, based on how much she took.
Okay. So she literally takes the damage in the moment. That's what I was trying to piece together.
Yeah. But I do wonder if it's like F.C.G. where there is like a break point where like all hell breaks loose. Speaking of F.C.G. though, I do like that he early on the set should be like, was that natural 20? And we didn't know what it was. And now he's like, yeah, this is how my character works. So anyway.
But yeah, just what a cool ability, and like what a cool like potential for an awesome moment ability. Like, yeah, like you could like maybe I don't know how this would work if like the damage you took would knock you out. Maybe Matt would still allow the attack to go off, but you could like do a super attack at the cost of your own.
Maybe like a little Vegeta Final Flash maneuver. I took you back. What
was that episode called?
Final Atonement.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
No, that was it.
So I hear. Watched it 12 times.
Yeah, exactly like that. But yeah, that was awesome. I would be interested to see if maybe that could even evolve as well. Like as she finds out more or grows stronger, like maybe that ability gets buffed as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, guys, thanks for watching today. I'm excited for tonight's episode. I hope you are as well. We should mention this in the intro. There's not an episode next week. So we're going to be reviewing season 1 of the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings show from Amazon. So if you've been watching that, stay tuned. We're going to be telling you, should you watch it, and our reactions to the show. So, all right. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the Pixelists. And other than that, I guess that's it. Oh, thumbnail.
We're also on TikTok. We haven't done anything on there recently, but check us out there as well. Yeah,
I've learned to stop saying we're on the TikTok. Yeah, we're on the TikToks.
I don't know what the thumbnail should be.
Maybe one of us should be like, Delilah getting, and I love Travis's like, maybe one person's like in shock or something.
What do you want to do?
You choose.
I'll be lunging at you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's the highlight of the episode right there.
As always.
Right. Yeah. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Bye, y'all.